Joining us for more is Tomas Valasek, Director of Carnegie Europe and the former Slovak ambassador to NATO. He joins us from Brussels. Good to have you on the program.
Great to be with you.
Thomas, what do you think we can expect from these meetings? I mean, Trump has criticized NATO for months and criticized every member of NATO for not paying enough. How tense do you think this could get?
A lot. I mean, the assumption is at the minimum, it's going to go as badly as the previous summit, which, if you remember, was already tense enough. There was the failure to mention the U.S. commitment to collective defense of European members. And, you know, the tough language on 2%, very similar to the tweets that you have just cited. So at the minimum, that's the expectation that we'll have a repeat. But, you know, people worry, what is it he'll do and for an encore? He was here last year. He delivered those messages. There was some progress, but not enough. So will he now try to double down in some way, shape, or form?
And what about Russia as an issue and Trump's meeting with Vladimir Putin, considering how, you know, the criticism against Russia, as you well know, even our own prime minister saying that Russia continues to be a country that's looking to disrupt and debilitate. What about that as a complicating factor, trying to bring people together?
It is a factor because everybody here at NATO wonders whether the agreements that will be signed Wednesday and Thursday will not be rendered irrelevant when Trump meets Putin on Monday. Specifically, the worry is that what may happen is sort of a mini repeat of the summit with Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader. You know, at the summit, the U.S. president signed what is by most accounts a fairly hollow deal, weaker than any agreements the U.S. has signed with North Korea before. And on the back of that, he had done something that he had probably wanted to do all along, which was to announce a suspension of U.S. military exercises in South Korea and essentially hint that he would like the U.S. troops to come back. So the fear is he may do the same thing with Putin, right? Meet with the Russian president on Monday, extract some sort of a vague concession from Russia, and then say, hey, Russia says we're cool. There's no tensions in Europe. Plus, the European allies are not paying for their defense. No need for as many American troops in Europe as we currently have. That's roughly the worry.
So there's a lot of work that goes into these summits that's done long before the leaders arrive so that they can find areas of agreement. But given the tension, where do you think those areas might be where there could be agreement?
Well, actually, there's quite a few, and they are fairly consequential. That's the oddity of the situation we find ourselves in, that you know, amidst this wreckage, when you have transatlantic cooperation collapse on Iran, on climate change, and when you have these accusations flying back and forth on who owes who and how much on defense, the actual working track, meaning the sort of conversations that foreign and defense ministers have had over the years, work really well. So, for example, one of the things that will be agreed at the summit within 48 hours is a pretty new, important way to reinforce the forward deployed troops in Europe. So the Canadian, US, UK troops that are in Central Europe, obviously at time of crisis, they will need reinforcements. And NATO is going to agree how that's going to be provided. That's important. So that gives substance to our defense plans. Of course, what hangs over all of this is the question, does the US president believe any of this? And would he actually do all these things that he signs on to in time of crisis?
And when we talk about with Trump's calls for everybody to step up and make that 2% GDP, our prime minister says that's not the only measure of the positive involvement in this. He says resources and leadership matter just as much. Do you agree?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I disagree with what the prime minister says, sad to say, though I understand why he says so. Let me explain. I think the 2% deal, you know, it was well understood by everybody. I was in a room at the time when it was agreed. It was well understood that it is a firm commitment. After all, you know, that's what the dotted line says. Allies will aspire to reach, will try hard to reach 2% by 2024. It's not a completely iron-proof commitment, but the understanding was clear. We will get to 2%. However, since then, President Trump, by asking for the 2% the way he does, right, by making it sound like it's a debt, by implying threats that if you know it's either going to get 2% or by picking fights with Europeans and Canadians on trade and other issues, he makes it really difficult politically for the Canadian Prime Minister, the German Chancellor, the French President to do what's in their own defense and what's in their own interest, right? The 2% makes sense, but politically, Trump has made it almost unpalatable to try to do what he is seen as asking for.
Interesting meetings ahead. Tomas, Valasek, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.